What I'm going to talk about is I'm going to talk about a tax initiative that we're putting on for the April 4th election. I'm going to tell you about that, why we're doing it, how we got there, what happens if it doesn't pass, what's it for. We're going to single around all of that information. Well, first of all, let me start at the beginning. So several months ago, especially wasn't too long after I was here, I noticed that we didn't, I always ask the question, why do we not have tax support? You know, as a Bates County hospital, why is there no tax support? But, you know, life happens and there's too much stuff going on, so I really wasn't thinking too much about it. It wasn't a priority. As time went on, we realized that, you know, that our ambulance service is losing over $500,000 a year. It's negative $500,000 a year. And it's not anything to do with any of the staff or the service. It's traditionally, in the state of Missouri and Kansas and several other states, ambulance services are run by taxes. They're supported by taxes. The people pay for their ambulance service. For some reason, Bates County does not, because there's no federal, state, or county or city laws that requires any municipality or government organization to staff and run an ambulance in any county in Missouri. Doesn't exist. So the people, when they want an ambulance, most people, you'll hear about, you know, hospitals running one, or ambulance districts were formed. Ambulance districts are political subdivisions that are developed by local citizens who come together and ask for a tax initiative to start an ambulance district. And then that district becomes its own political subdivision once it's elected, and then they elect a board of directors and it becomes its own entity. It actually has the power to make laws within their district in reference to ambulances. And those taxes for an ambulance district are property taxes. But what motivates us, because departments of this hospital that are profitable are carrying that loss. And they have been for some time. So it's like, well, then why are we doing it now? Because it's really not an opportune time with the economy. But with the increase in fuel, salaries, supplies, which have gone overinflated above and beyond the national index, is really inflated that loss dramatically. So our CPAs that are on staff at our hospital, we have 3 of them, you know, they get to see that by projecting from historically where we've been financially on our payer mixes, the number of runs, supplies and everything, they can project historically out to 5 years that will increase to $1.2 million a year loss. Now, ambulance districts or ambulance services, most of them, there's still a few holdouts, but most of them have their own base or quarters, you know, that has living rooms and kitchen and bedrooms and rec room maybe, or, you know, a couple garages in that. That's the norm for ambulance services in the state of Missouri. This, running out of the ER, is not. So we want to, first of all, the reason why we asking for this tax vote from the people is because we want to, first of all, keep an ambulance service in Bates County. We want it to always be here, and we want it to be a Bates County hospital ambulance, still a department of the hospital. And we want to, what I want to say, I'm going to use the word modernize it so that we're attractive to paramedics and EMTs throughout the state that are looking for a place to work, so that they would move here. So sometimes we have trouble staffing because they say they have to work in the ER, where they could go to another base someplace and, you know, they got a nice living quarters and they get paid for being available. So it will help that a lot as well. But the main reason is because of the deficit. We can't sustain that deficit. And that deficit is detrimental to our bottom line. And whether or not we have a margin or not to be able to do other things for the hospital, such as repair and maintenance and operations. Now, we're not in any trouble right now because of the fact that this hospital is doing well. We're sustaining that. but it's not good business. It's not even business 101. If you're going to do a business someplace and you have a continuous loss leader in an area, you have to evaluate whether or not that's still good for your business to make it viable 5, 10 years out the line, down the road. And we want it to be viable for our children and our grandchildren as well. The board and all of us that are here today want to be the ones that run the ambulance and have the ambulance for Bates County. So what does this mean? What does this tax mean? Well, it's a property tax, and that's by law. We asked for a sales tax because we wanted every person that drove through town and stopped at McDonald's to pay for it just as like the rest of us. But the state statutes of Missouri says that a hospital tax must be a real estate property tax. So we have no choice. That's the only one we can ask for. There is no ambulance sales tax that even exists in the state of Missouri. So that's what we did. So the state statute says we can go up to $1 per 100 assessed evaluation. We only need to cover our losses. So we asked for 50 cents on a 100 evaluation instead of the full dollar. I would imagine we'll still have to subsidize to some extent in the future, but in this county, 0.5 off of a dollar would bring in about $1.2 million. So by year 5 or 6, we're going to be at that $1.2 million. A house that's worth $100,000 is a good example. Its assessed evaluation would be $19,000. So the tax on that at the new increase would be $95 more added to your tax per year, or about $8 a month if you're in escrow, or if you pay it outright every time, you'd be adding $95 to that bill. Different tax rates exist for different things. Commercial property is our highest tax rate, and then residential, and then there's grazing land, and there's farmland that's tillable, and bottom land. They're all at different assessed rates, tax rates. So somebody that owns 10,000 acres, depending on what kind of property they have, may actually assess lower than a house in town. And you go, what? They own that much property? Well, it depends on which one of those it falls into. So some farmers could get hit pretty hard. And some of them, depending on what their land is used for, may not. So it really, that's for everybody to figure out. And we have some of that in our press release to help people figure out how it would impact them. So we went over the reason why we're doing it is because we're losing $500,000 a year. We want to stop that, and we want to be able to keep the ambulance here so that we don't say, or the board doesn't get together and on the recommendation of the finance and executive team that we have to stop this bleed, so we're going to have to get rid of it. So that's the worst case scenario, and we don't want that to happen. So that's the reason. The fix, we're not going to save money by, let's just have one ambulance and 2 people. That's not the fix, okay? We want to have an efficient, good, maintain our level of excellence and our service now. So that's why we're asking for it. So the pro will be we get to keep our ambulance. The longevity of it for the future of Bates County is there, and the citizens of Bates County will be help paying for that. The cons is that you're paying more money out of your pocket if you own property. So it's up to you. We as a hospital, Bates County Memorial Hospital and its staff, will not ask you to vote yes or no. That's up to you. So our job is going to be to educate the public on why we need it and what's happening. Now, we're not allowed by law to politic because we're a political subdivision. So I can't go to someone's house, knock on their door and say, hey, I'm from Bates County Hospital and we'd love your vote to vote yes on April 4th. I can't do that. So a political action committee was formed of concerned citizens in Bates County who want to be a part of Save the Ambulance. And 2 of them so far have stepped up. One is the treasurer named John Daniels. Did I say that right? Mm-hmm. He's an accountant here in town. Some of you may or may not know him. And the other one is Kay Caskey. Probably know her to some extent. And that's just the first 2. We have no control over who becomes the PAC because we can't do any politicking whatsoever. But what that PAC does, that Political Action Committee, is the ones who buys all the signs, postcards, mailings, advertisements, flyers. They're the ones who pay for that. They do fundraisers, try to get donations to the Political Action Committee, and they'll go out and then find other members, other concerned citizens that want to be a part of that. And you can be an employee and be a part of that. You just can't represent Bates County when you're on that. We're represented by an advisory committee to the PAC, which will be some of us in the executive team and a committee that's already been formed who did all the research to bring this to the ballot. But we can't politic, but they can. So you should see sometime in mid-January they'll start probably working and talking about it and looking for donations and doing what they need to get this show on the road. Because April 4th isn't that far away. All right, so what if it fails? We have an opportunity to try it twice to the ballot. There's 2 ways that we can, if it fails the first time, we can, if the PAC has enough money, they can call for a special election. The PAC has to pay for that. The county does not offer that for free. It's somewhere around it'll be over $10,000, but probably less than 20. If they get enough donations, they could go, let's have another election like in August or something, and they would have to pay for it. Otherwise, you got to wait till the next election cycle, which is not going to happen until 2024, late 2024. So we would go, so from today, we'd probably be sustaining the loss for up to another 2 years. So we wouldn't close anything. It would have to be something dramatic that happened for us to go, we cannot continue on, or we're not going to be able to fund, X, Y, or Z or something. I don't foresee that. So I don't think that will be an issue, but how life is, things change pretty fast. If a boiler goes out, we're paying $80,000 to replace it. Some things like that are high dollars amount that hospitals use. And we have to keep our equipment up and updated and be ready to serve the people of Bates County now in the surrounding areas. So that's your 2 chances. You can run it all you want. You can do it every election period. But it'd be like after it happened twice and people felt it's almost like, well, obviously you don't want an ambulance service. So and I have great experience with this because I worked at Audrain Medical Center in Mexico, Missouri, was there for almost 30 years. And our ambulance service, the same thing happened. They said, we can no longer afford the ambulance. Now, this was like 17 years ago. And ambulance districts were already formed everywhere. They said, we can no longer afford the ambulance, and all the city and county officials rejected any notion of putting a tax on to support it. So the hospital issued a statement and set a date and said, as of this date, we will no longer offer 911 services to Audrain County. And once they did that, everybody woke up. And it didn't take long for a committee to get together, and a tax was passed, and today they're now Audrain Ambulance District instead of Audrain Medical Center Ambulance. And they still exist today on those tax dollars and the receipts you get in. We only get, did I tell you already, we only get about 30 to 40 cents on the dollar on every claim that we send in. And that doesn't count all the free ones, like dry runs and no-shows, or citizens assist. You go out to somebody's house, 4 miles out in the country, help them get off the floor and they're okay. You don't get a dime for that. And there's no obligation for us to even do that. They do it because someone asked for help. They could have said no. So that's what we would have to look at, is what will our service be like? So if we have to issue a statement that says, as of this date, we will no longer offer 911 services, then that's what will happen. We'll keep an ambulance for us. I would imagine we'd keep 2, because it'd look pretty stupid of us to get rid of our ambulances and we can't get rid of our patients on the floor or in the ER. So we would have to maintain 2 crews and 2 ambulances, and try to downsize, and they'd have to work like in the ER or something to pay for them, and it'd be hard to recruit people for that. You'd probably get some that maybe live local and don't want to move, but it would not be easy. All right, so now let's say it passes. So if it passes, we're predicting not full money the first year, because the ballot's in April, right? So any taxes collected in that year will be prorated for when taxes are starting to be paid again in January. So we're looking at probably the second year, full second year, or full whole 12 months before you get fully funded. So we would have to support that and subsidize it as well. And then knowing that from our projections, even from a consultant in Kansas City, that it is going to be projected to be 1.2 million. First of all, before it gets there, we'll have a surplus. Because remember, we're running about 500,000, and we'll be about 600,000, somewhere between 5 and 7, and we're getting 1.2 million. So we have an opportunity to then, in the early stages, to build our ambulance base on this property, our ambulance quarters, and get that taken care of. And then the areas where the ambulance are now in the ER, that has a lot of supplies in it, all of that stuff would be in the new ambulance base, in their quarters, in their storage area. And then that would open up for the ER. So some money may have to be spent to remodel those areas so they can be used for patient areas, without having to knock out a wall and say, well, let's try to add on thousands and thousands of dollars, where you could probably remodel that area and spruce it up for them, and they're ready to go with 2 new rooms and a storage area that they never had. So that's a domino effect, and also it'll be a domino effect for us as well, because money that was coming from profitable areas to make up that $500,000 deficit is now available for operations. So you can see how that will help affect the age of the building, which is one of our greatest downfalls, like roofs, stuff like that are deteriorating rapidly and cost over $30,000, $40,000 to repair every time. Boiler equipment, HVAC equipment, all of that stuff is what a hospital tax could be used for, but we earmarked it toward ambulance. So then inadvertently, it opens it up for that to be used from monies we already had. So it appears as if though it's helping the whole hospital, which it will. So if we're paying taxes now, that means the ambulance is free for me, right? No, it's not. Because we're cutting out the deficit. We still need the receipts that come in from the bills. We still need that money coming in from billing. So that wouldn't be true. And there's some people that think the hospital has so much money they don't know what to do with it. And that's not true. We have a negative bottom line. That's just very transparent. And many, many times it would be above the line if we hadn't had that lost from the ambulance. So I look for an increase in our margin. So you're wearing one of these badges, or you're working the front desk, Or you stop at the gas station and somebody sees your name tags, and that, what's this deal about the tax? I don't want you to go, I have no idea what you're talking about. I want you at least to be able to give an answer of some extent about, yeah, we're losing money on the ambulance and we need to subsidize it, so we're asking for a tax because we want to keep an ambulance here. And then if they get some detailed questions like, well, and ask and start getting hostile or something, you can have them call us, okay? You just say, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you just call up the hospital and they'll be glad to help you answer those questions. You don't need to get in an argument with anybody.